All right. Hello, everyone. We are so glad you're able to join us today for our CIO Roundtable. For those of you who are new here, I'm Hannah Jennings, and I'm a community organizer at Tech in Motion. Over 10 years ago, staffing and recruiting firm Motion Recruitment founded Tech in Motion with the goal of bringing together the tech community to share ideas and inspire one another. We are constantly on the lookout for new event topics, passionate speakers, expert contributors, and more. So if you're interested in getting more involved within our community, feel free to reach out to me after today's session. At the end of the event, keep an eye out for a survey so you can weigh in on topics covered in our next roundtable. For today's event, I'm thrilled to bring you a discussion around how forward-thinking CIOs are driving digital innovation and setting their teams up for success in 2023. In the face of economic uncertainty and growing cyber risks, today's digital leaders are forced to become even more strategic, adapting to the rapidly changing digital landscape. Our panel of top tech executives are here to share the best practices and insights to plan for the new year. If after today's discussion, you are interested in learning more about tech salaries, market shaping trends, and more, scan the QR code you see on your screen to download Motion Recruitment's 2023 Tech Salary Guide. Please submit any questions you may have throughout the event in our chat, and our panelists will do their absolute best to get to each and every one of them. We're also recording the session, so if you have to hop off early for any reason, no worries. We will ensure you get a recording via email. Now, without further delay, I am pleased to introduce you to our host for today, Mark Settle. Mark is a 7-time CIO, 3-time CIO 100 award winner, and 2-time author. His most recent book is Truth from the Valley, a practical primer on IT management for the next decade. Mark serves on the advisory board of several venture capital firms and personally advises multiple startup companies. We are honored to have him hosting today. So Mark, I will let you take it from here.
Okay, well, thanks for the intro, and I won't waste a lot of time providing a lot of additional color. And I'm going to try to move our 3 great panelists today through a couple of different questions that hopefully will give the audience some insight into some opportunities, both business and technical, that their respective organizations are chasing. And we want to kind of close the discussion by sharing some leadership advice that may inform some of the decisions and activities, again, of our audience members. And so with no further ado, I'm going to kind of go through the lineup here and ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, maybe say a few words about your company or organization, talk about your role, and just give us a real quick snapshot of the year ahead. So you've all been through a 2023 budgeting exercise. You've had to, you went through that with some assumptions or presumptions about what next year is going to look like, and in the context of the current economic downturn within your organization, is this a year of retrenchment? Is this a year of kind of wait and see, steady as you go? Or are there some strategic opportunities here from a business point of view that your organization is trying to explore? So I'm just going to start with the lineup on my screen here. John, do you want to get us started?
Sure, it'd be my pleasure. My name is John Rosenbaum. I'm Chief Information Officer over at Motion Recruitment. Been in the staffing industry, which is professional services, for about a decade now. Before that, was in consulting with a company called Slalom and some previous consulting firms before that. Going through our strategic planning for this year, I think it's important to kind of touch on a little bit kind of where Motion is. Motion's been going through a rapid period of growth. And so for us, where we're really focused going into next year is in 2 areas. One is in our foundation. So we've gone through rapid growth and just slowing down to invest in our foundation, invest in our systems and platforms so that we have a solid foundation for doing continuous innovation and digital innovation on top of that platform moving forward is one of our biggest focuses. And we look at sort of a time of a little bit of uncertainty as a good time to invest in that foundation so that we're ready to springboard out of any economic slowdowns or economic uncertainty that may be happening. The second biggest area that we're focused in, and I think maybe this is an important question for the rest of the panelists too, a little bit of it is how you define digital. So for us, digital is about how we engage with our clients and our customers using technology. And so in a professional services space like us, we're always sort of balancing this. How do we automate and use technology to engage with consultants, like a lot of folks on this call, candidates who are coming in that might be a great match for our clients without sacrificing this human touch, without sacrificing relationships and kind of a feeling of authenticity that are really difficult to replace. So we're looking at a few technologies that help automate how we push jobs out to various job boards, scan through resumes to find the best people, do matches between our clients and our candidates. And those are some of the biggest focuses going on for us right now, Mark.
Great. Okay, Lisa, why don't you tell us about VyStar Credit Union a little bit and what 2023 looks like from your perspective?
All right, thank you. So I'm the CIO at VyStar Credit Union. It's the second largest credit union in Florida, and I believe we're the 13th largest credit union in the country, but we're growing. And so we just opened our first branch in the state of Georgia and plan to open more branches in Georgia and continue to spread out across the Northeast Florida corridor. So with that, I would say from an IT standpoint, we're at a point of inflection. Similar to John, the priorities for me are to make sure that we're positioned for growth. I, prior to joining VyStar, have a lot of experience in financial institutions like Citi and Bank of America, and so obviously the size and scale of those organizations are very different than a credit union, but we recently grew over the $10 billion mark. So that means that the CFPB and the Durbin Amendment now apply to our credit union. And for those of you that aren't in financial services, basically what that means is that from an interchange standpoint, our interchange fees are reduced by 50% on debit cards, and so that's a hurdle to go over from an earnings perspective as an organization. And a credit union is a nonprofit financial institution. And so our mission is really about giving back to our members. How can we provide lower fees and giving back to our communities? And we are engaged a lot in give back in a community standpoint. And so as we enter in a downturn in the economy, it's an opportunity for us to be there for our members in ways that maybe other financial institutions can't. And so it's critical that not only can we grow and scale to support as we expand out, and the downturn isn't really impacting our plans to do that, because in a financial downturn, it's a way for credit unions to step in and help people that might be struggling in that environment. And so, for me, we have a big data center move coming up. And then we're also, just as John's doing, is just making sure our infrastructure and our technology is positioned to be able to support that growth and that scale as we transition to a larger organization.
So when you talk about growth from a membership point of view, is 2023 maybe going to be like a 10% or 20% growth in membership? Is that?
Yeah, I think 10% is probably a good estimate. I don't have the exact forecast in front of me, and some of that'll depend on timing of when we are able to open those branches. We have about 850,000 members now, and the last several months have been some of the best months of growing our membership, and so.
Great. Okay, Joe, bring us home.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Shane. I'm the CTO and co-founder of CLight Technologies. We are a neurotech and plus AI company. And, basically our mission is actually, there's, millions, hundreds of millions of people out there. They have issues with eye, brain health, neurological disease, disorder, all that. And, they have to go through a unnecessary prolonged process in order to get that information about their brain, about their eye. And our mission is basically, how can we shorten that process? How can they get the information as early as possible? There are people who wait for years or even decades until they realize there's something going on. So that's basically what we have been focusing on, the CLight Technologies. Like, how do we digitalize, the process so that people can have a very easy access to that information, to that brain health information. For next year, we're an early stage startup, right? We're like right close to that tipping point to scale up. I would say number one priority for next year is scale up. We have X, pipeline. We have our own, sort of like a one-stop pipeline, hardware, software, everything all together in a product. So we have X product deployed so far. Now for next year, we're thinking, basically scale up. How can we have more of this pipeline embedded, into the whole healthcare system? And then that's basically our number one priority, about scaling out and getting more data. The number two is, of course, about AI technology. We're like heavily focusing on AI technology. We call them neuro-inspired AI technology, right? So we design our own algorithms. These algorithms are all like strongly linked with the disease prediction, all that. And then the number two priority is like, how can we make this algorithm technologies as generalizable as possible? We're not talking about a disease or two disease, right? We're talking about how can we generalize this process? How can we take data, make predictions? We're talking about really high quality data, right? Those eye motion, tiny, teeny micro motions. How can we utilize those motions and generalize to many, many different disease? And again, helping hundreds of millions of people. I would say that's our top two priority for next year. Once again, thanks for having us, Mark.
Pleasure. So I'm gonna stick with you, Joe. I think a lot of the members of the audience here would be interested in some of the, the technologies that each of you are experimenting with or kind of placing your bets. You all know there's like a huge smorgasbord of opportunities out there: information security, data analytics, business process automation, collaboration tools. It's kind of overwhelming, really, at the end of the day. And so, I mean, it's been my experience, every year you go through the budgeting cycle, you kind of say, okay, we got a couple initiatives here. Maybe in some cases you're trying to fix a problem, maybe some tools you've used in the past have come up short, or there's better capabilities out there. So you're basically doing some kind of a replacement or a displacement kind of a thing. Or, you've heard good things about a new technology, and this is the year to put your toe in the water and start to experiment with it and do a little prototyping and maybe see if it has a business impact. So I think everybody, a lot of our listeners would be thinking, okay, what are these guys doing? Like, where are they placing their bets? So Joe, just reflect a little bit on maybe a couple of technology areas tied to some of your big initiatives where, you're excited and you're going to be using some new technology.
Yeah, I can talk about that. In my space, right, the space we're working on, it's kind of like a trend you'll see about probably 10 years ago on computer vision space, right? People were doing all computer vision, look into an image, right? Look at the edges, contrast, all the colors. That was more like people were doing 10 years ago. And all of a sudden, there's this new thing called deep learning comes out. And then everybody's trying that. And then they find out this is just much nicer. The process is more streamlined, optimized. I think that we're seeing somewhat similar process as about 10 years ago in my space. People have been doing things, for decades. They're doing this way until they realize there's another technology. We're talking about AI, deep learning, right? And that's gonna make the process just much shorter, purely data driven, and you don't do a lot of, I call them ad hoc, like a system engineering, right? Trying to define what you want, and then later on you're gonna go back and change that all the time, iterative, like a ping pong process. So I think that's one of the main lessons learned on my side about new technology and trending. And of course, like if you're talking about trending, I guess recently people have been talking about ChatGPT a lot, right? I mean, I think it's going to just revolutionize a lot of field. That's just my take on the trending and new technologies.
Are you experimenting with generative AI type tools?
Oh yeah, I've been playing around with it a lot. Like,
Okay.
You can ask them very simple things like, what is the quick sort? What is the bubble sort? And then they'll explain to you what it is, and they'll even give you a little snippet of a code, how it look like. And it's gonna do it in different ways. Like you can do it like, I read a post right online that they do it like a 1940 gangster movie. They just use the tone, like how they talk, the way they talk, right? You can feel that, right? And that's not human, like hard coded at all, because it's adapting to your conversation. So it's AI that is doing it. So that was like quite amazing.
Interesting. John, tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that are going to involve new or maybe expanded use of some technology.
Sure. Yeah, I think one, which is probably a little less flashy, which is more about in the heart of our systems foundation. For us, and definitely new for us, and kind of broadening in use across the industry. As we're laying down our new systems foundation, we're looking at an integration platform as a service. And so you've seen a lot of these out there, whether it's Workato or a Boomi or MuleSoft. We're in the HR tech space for a lot of the tools that we use to digitally transform our business. And so being able to link those tools together, pull the data out of one tool and push it into another tool, pull all of that data out and be able to gather insights around our clients, our consultants, and what they prefer and how they want to be communicated with and engaged with is really important. And sort of these sort of integration platform as a service tools are really providing that ease of integration, ease of data liberation for us. I think on the other side, we are extremely passionate about our consultants and our candidates and getting to know them really well, engaging with them, making sure that Motion's a great place for them to work and grow their career, because happy and successful candidates, consultants make happy clients. But we've been looking at ways to engage with them in more automated ways. And so there's certain things throughout the customer, we call it the customer journey, but the consultant or client journey, where they want specific pieces of information, and to be able to use a customer data platform and a little bit of intelligence to push and pull different pieces of information to them throughout that customer journey is really important. Hey, you've been working at a client for a while. How's that going? Any sort of feedback on that client, and to be able to receive that and discern, hey, this candidate or this client or this consultant, has something going on. We need to go talk to them. There's the tone of the message isn't good, and we need to reach out and really take care of them a little bit better.
So is that some kind of a homegrown capability, or have you gone out and found a customer data platform? Or
yeah, we're looking at a few different customer data platforms. Nothing homegrown at this time at all.
Okay. I'm curious to go back to the iPaaS vendors. So I think iPaaS tools get used extensively just to synchronize data, just what you just described, kind of moving data around between different applications. And then there's like another extension of that, which is basically to automate workflows. You kind of find a workflow, right? It could be an onboarding workflow, or it could be somebody coming up on a website looking for information, and that triggers follow-up calls or emails with documents, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So is your interest in the iPaaS and the emphasis this year more on that workflow automation side of things, or keeping the portfolio synchronized?
Yeah, right now it's about integration and synchronization, but the tools that we're looking at, we're making sure they have that capability for that workflow automation moving forward. So we have a couple of different tools we might use for whether we use UiPath for RPA over here or something like that. We're really optimistic that there's a tool that can get us a lot of that automation and integration all in one.
Yep. Lisa.
Yeah, so there's several different areas that we're investing in innovation and technology. One of them is in in our phone channels. If we can contain that in the IVR space, that helps get our members information and solve their needs quicker, and requires less people on the phone or in the branches. And so we're using some AI tools to help with that container rate, and we piloted that and had a better than anticipated containment in the IVR channel. So we'll continue to deepen our relationship with that AI product to continue helping to meet members who come through the phone channel. Another really innovative thing that we look at is credit decisioning. And so some of the historical credit decisioning models, they were developed about 30 years ago, and I think use about 50 different variables to make decisions about credit. And if you think about us as humans and then the evolution of technology, there's a lot of opportunity in those models. There's a lot of bias built into them, and not only that, it's only 50 variables, and it was developed several decades ago. So We have an AI product that we're using, Zest AI, to make credit decisioning. We found that we're able to give more credit to people who wouldn't have qualified necessarily under those other decisioning models, and and it hasn't impacted, the quality of our credit portfolio, and so we've been able to get more products into underrepresented people's hands, which I think is good for all of us.
So that's fascinating. If you're at liberty, what are some of the variables driving those credit decisions that maybe were not historically used or were not so obvious in the past? Some things.
I don't. It's just the data that comes from the from the credit bureaus themselves for someone like TransUnion variable. So it's not anything. It's not anything creepy or getting information from social media or any weird places. It's just taking in more information and doing it in a way that removes maybe whatever bias or whatever restrictions happen when you just have 50 variables versus 200 different factors to take into account. I think some of that maybe if the older models focused on just a geographical, where you live or something like that, that can that could disqualify people that live in a certain area and things like that. I'm not saying I didn't develop the model, so I don't know for certain what the main differences are. I just find I think we've just advanced enough that we can use AI and more information and make decisions that don't create more risk for us, but give more financial products to people who are typically underrepresented. And so we've seen an increase in those groups through that decisioning, and we haven't seen an increase in delinquency. So they're working, and so looking forward to continue to deepen our partnership with that.
Actually, I'm going to circle back and take you back to the call center as well. There's a lot of call center technologies. So have you introduced chatbots? Are you starting to use?
So we're using a tool called Posh AI. So we're using it. We're just starting to use it in the call center in our IBR, and then we have started doing some look at how do we maybe use it as a chatbot to help our employees on the phone or in the branches do their work better. So we're just slowly kind of delving into that. We don't have a chatbot interaction with our members directly.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so I'm going to kind of switch gears and move on to a different topic or theme around the war for talent. And I want to ask each of you to identify some of the key skills that you're targeting for next year in terms of recruiting, and maybe any tips or tricks that you've developed in terms of sourcing or screening or onboarding candidates. Obviously the whole the tech labor market has been completely disrupted by COVID, and it's just a whole kind of different world than the ways in which I was hired into jobs, in the past, the way the interviewing process works, how you stumble onto opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So, Lisa, if you can start us, if there's one or two kind of key skill areas, whether you're actively recruiting or you just know sometime next year, I'm going to be in the market for, a certain kind of skill. And if you've stumbled on any tips that you might share.
Yeah, so I have openings across pretty much every type of role in in our organization. And I mentioned we're sort of at a point of inflection. So I'm trying to augment the team with, skills that maybe they don't natively have if they've worked here at the credit union for a long time. So, cloud-based technology and systems engineers that are experts in, some of the cloud products, security and cybersecurity are always critical skills in financial institutions, and trying to, I balance that with, partnering with companies that can help, because I can't have a organization the size and scale of a Bank of America or a Citibank, but I need to protect the member data, and, bad guys don't distinguish by size on how aggressive they are about trying to, get information. And so having expertise in that space that know those products and how to put them together to best protect our credit union or our critical skills. That and then I really focused in the past year on new talent, because I think it's important to have new talent entering into the workforce. And so we started an internship program that's been very successful, and I spend a lot of my time, volunteering in high schools and speaking at colleges and trying to attract more people in general to computer science or cybersecurity. Because even if we had equal representation from every ethnic group and gender, we would everybody would still have a seat at the table in technology. I think there's 700,000 open cyber security positions across the country. So I've really kind of doubled down on how much of my time and personal commitment I give to try starting much earlier in the recruitment process before they even know what they want to do with life.
Yeah, I've talked about that in one of my books, that I don't know if all CIOs really are conscious of this, but you really are the chief marketing officer for your own organization.
Right.
And you need to carve out some time to tell your story in as many different venues as you can kind of get yourself invited into. And whether somebody's just coming out of school or they're 10 years into their career, every organization, locally kind of has a reputation. The IT team has a reputation. It's either it's a fun place to work or it's a slave shop, and
Right.
It's a collaborative environment, or it's a top-down hierarchy with massive politics that people, have to, they seek therapy, from having to work there, and right or wrong, or it's very innovative. They're willing to try new, or they're just stuck in the mud. You can't bring a new idea in there. Nobody wants to do anything different than they've done in the last 10 years. So if you don't go out there and kind of tell your story, whether it's a recruiter reaching out or somebody on their own initiative poking around looking for an opportunity, there's lots of other places for those kind of people to focus. So
yeah, and it's hard to compete on wages right now because in Jacksonville, Florida, the market's very different than on the West Coast in the salaries. And so the fact that the landscape sort of even the playing field from a number of companies that allow people to work remotely, and it's inflated salaries here, and we've done a lot of work to look at our salaries that we offer and the ranges of the positions and all of those things, and certainly are trying to stay competitive from salary. But I think for anybody, it's hard to always win on salary, and if you're just winning on salary, you might not be attracting the right people from a culture standpoint. And so what I try to always do is win on culture. And so there's a lot of work that me and my leadership team are going to do in the next year to really focus on our culture and make sure we're creating the culture that is reflective of the broader culture at our credit union, and also makes it a place that people want to go to work.
Yep. That's another kind of perspective, which I think gets lost on a lot of people. When you're in a smaller company or in a smaller IT group, you have some benefits. The jobs, there's more flexibility about the scope of work. The bigger the organization, the more compartmentalized your role is going to be. And the larger the organization, the more likely remote you're going to be from the business people. You may not go to meetings with business people, you may just go to meetings with other IT people, et cetera. And so a lot of times, especially people in the earlier stages of their career, they'll get an exposure to, the business side of their organizations. They'll work more collaboratively, probably, and more frequently with people well outside their discipline areas, et cetera. And then you get to some 20,000 person organization or larger, like the ones that you've had experience in, and you get put in a shoebox, and all you do is you see the other people in the same shoebox. So
yeah. Lisa, I think you hit on it really well there at the tail end about trying to find a way to sell the culture. And Mark, you talked about it too, being able to tell the story. Here's the story of what we're doing. Here's the story of our culture. For us, data and security are two of the big areas we're hiring into right now. And obviously like everybody else. Those are hard areas to find the quality folks. But for us, we changed the dial a little bit, and like having I pull for a little bit from Patrick Lencioni, hungry, humble, and smart as the ideal team player. You know, these are folks that are self-starters, they're hungry, they want to work hard, they're humble, willing to they don't have to be the smartest person in the room, willing to admit when they've made mistakes, and then smart, and not smart skills wise, but smart like emotional intelligence wise, able to navigate a team, navigate an organization in a way that's straight and direct, but is also kind, and thinks about other people's feelings. And like that culture, then with sort of the opportunities to work in a broad not be in a shoebox, be able to work broad across the business, is something that we've used to attract high quality talent. And that instead of trying to compete on salary.
Yeah, exactly.
And secondarily, being a IT staffing company, we lean heavily on on what we do. And so our recruiters in our offices have deep relationships and networks of talent that they can tap into people who aren't actively working. They're not on the job boards, but they have a relationship with them because we're an IT staffing firm. We maintain those relationships long term, and they're able to go sell the culture and the type of work instead of it being about a big job posting in a big.
Are you exploring some less conventional sources? Are you doing anything out of the kind of the normal course of action to, find different sources of people?
Yeah, we are typically relying on some of the traditional sources, networking, LinkedIn, but also technology events and networking through being plugged into things like Tech in Motion, being plugged into different organizations in the different metropolitan areas. And so it's another reason being able to lean on an IT staffing firm a bit is that they're doing that kind of active networking all the time for us. And we're able to take advantage of that.
One of the areas that I think, I think there's probably some untapped talent in is I found and I ran into along the course of my career, a lot of women or men who left the workplace for reasons usually to focus on their families, and trying to get back into technology is extremely hard. But it doesn't change. I mean, people have been saying COBOL was going to go away since I graduated from college a really long time ago, and there's still COBOL jobs. So there's lots of jobs for, especially some of those people that have only been out of the workplace, 3, 5, 7 years or whatever. And we don't make it easy for them to return to work. And I know that Amazon has a returnship program that is, kind of tapping into that market. And there's some nonprofit and some organizations to work with. But, I think that that's an area to go after and find talent. And the people that you hire then are so grateful for the opportunity. You almost,
you appreciate your job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for the past years, right? I've been always joking, like I've been pitching all the time for the past years. I pitch to investors, of course, right? Typical Silicon Valley dream, right? We want to do this. That's our technology. We want to help people. But I would say I pitch more to the candidates. Like I find someone, I call this like personalized hiring, right? Talent recruiting. I go take a look at their GitHub repos. I've been looking at what this person has been doing for the past years. And usually the engineers, right, they're really focused on the thing that they have passion. So if you have that, if you understand what they're doing, why they're pursuing that, it can be really personalized process. And I really pitch to them. I have meeting with them. I go out and meet with them. I have coffee with them. I even travel to go to their city to meet them, right? I'm trying to pitch, like, here's our dream, right? We wanted you to be part of it. Like, we're building a team here, right? Do you want to, join us? I think that's really important. I actually had a successful experience in the past that people actually had a competing offer from big orgs, as Mark said, right? Big orgs, they have better salary, all that. But then it turned out the candidate actually turned around and actually joined us, where we were just like 3 people, I believe. That example I was talking about. So giving up a job offer with a higher salary at a big org, a big company, joining a 3 people startup company, I just feel that, that's actually working right. The personalized hiring process is always about engaging. How do you engage people? Like, this is the thing we want to do. This is our culture. And we respect the area, the field that you have passion with, right? So I think it's totally, very important. Culture is number one. Mark, I see a question in the Q&A. I don't know if you want to do Q&A in the end. Exactly about the cultural, like, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I see a question asking about like the top three, whatever cultural that your opinion. I can start first. For me, I think trust is number one, especially you're a small team, 3 people, 4 people, you're growing to 10, 20, 30, all the founders, co-founder, right? All the, tech lead people, the trust is very important. You're not going to do everything by yourself, period. You have to let people work on their field, their thing that they're good at. You have to trust them. I think that's the number one. And then the second one for me is transparency. Again, like within the team, I like the flat structure, right? In startup county, as opposed to like this, right? Where you have a lot of hierarchies, right? Flat is, I think, is good. You get all the transparency. Everything should be straightforward. No redundant communication within the team, right? The efficiency is going to be very high. And the last one, I think I learned it from my co-founder, Christy Shihai, who's not here right now. But I think that's something I've been keep improving on my end, which is caring. You're going to care for all the team members in your startup team. Like you care about how they work, you care about how they feel, right? You care about their emotion, everything. And that's the field that I've been, improving, I think, at least in CLI technologies, right? I learned a lot from my co-founder. That's the 3 most, I think, important cultures, in my opinion.
So let's reflect on that a little bit. It was interesting to me that when we talked about technologies, none of you talked about investments in collaboration tools. And I think the popular or conventional wisdom at this point is every company, as a result of COVID in the early stages, threw money at the problem, rolled out all kinds of different tools, video conferencing, texting, whiteboarding, whatever. And everybody's kind of has groped over the last 2 years to learn how to use those tools to create the so-called hybrid workplace. So Joe, I'm going to challenge you. Those are all great principles, but how do you think about making those kind of actionable in terms of managing a distributed team, with the use of those kind of technologies? Again, tips or tricks, things that have really, really worked well for you.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Like you said, Mark, there's so many tools, right? Project management, program management, development management, workflow. I think in the end, my opinion is like the essence of basically communication. It's all about how do you cut down redundant, unnecessary communication, back and forth communication, and get the job done. I think that's the no matter what tool you're using, right? I don't want to name the tools, but you have a lot of tools you can use. But the whole process, you define your own process, and you want that process to have close to 0 redundant communications. Like, what is the job? What are the priorities? What are the ETAs? And how do why this is important, right? And how to get it done. And once you have that defined, every developer, like I said, they are expert in their field. If you can have the job clearly defined, it'll get executed. That's my opinion. That's my just past experience. I have full trust for all the best developers that we hire. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to John, but I have to share a personal story. So several years ago, I was in San Diego visiting a company, and they were building a network appliance, and there were about 30 people, I think, in the company. So every morning in the coffee bar, they had like an all-company stand-up meeting. And on the wall, they had this big engineering schematic diagram of the appliance, like the innards of the appliance, right, or whatever. And the CEO stood up every morning, they told me, because I saw it in action, and he pointed at that, and he said, anytime you spend a day that's not devoted to like making that is a waste of time. Like if you're not doing something, spending every minute while you're here, helping us get that built, that's not a good use of your time. So
yeah, that when you first mentioned tools and collaboration tools, I started listing out like all the ones I've used over the past, and was trying to think like what's the best one. And I was like, they're all fine, but it doesn't matter if the team's way of working together isn't good and healthy. And and then Mark, kind of what you settled on there at the end was if the team's not focused the right way. And so we've all been involved in meetings and work sessions, whether they're virtual or in person or whatever, that you invest a lot of time, but it doesn't feel like you make a lot of progress.
Yeah.
Or your calendar's full from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., but you don't, and you're in work sessions, you're in meetings, you're constantly on the phone, but it doesn't feel like you've moved towards the goal at all. And so like all the tools and collaboration things aside for a second, I think one of the most important tools and one of the most important things for culture, going back to the previous question that was in the chat, is really about focus. Like, how do you get everybody moving in the same direction? Say no to a bunch of good stuff so you can say yes to the great things, and keep everyone there focused as you're trying to get to a long-term goal. I know it's not one of our topics, but it's one of the things I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, I think focus and alignment.
Yep.
Super important. Lisa,
Okay.
you want to weigh in on this in
Yeah.
terms of managing? Just to also follow up on Joe's comment, communication support. Now, one of the things you have kind of working against you in the current environment is because more people are working remotely, work is becoming increasingly asynchronous. You don't have the luxury of like that San Diego company, the 30 people are all physically in one room at the same time of day looking at each other. And there's this level of personal accountability. I mean, I think some stand-up meetings and engineering teams get recorded and people look at that, at different times of day. It's not even all hands on deck virtually, for the one meeting every day. So, and it varies from one company to another, obviously, but work is becoming increasingly asynchronous over time as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Lisa, what do you do? How are you thinking about managing your team? I'm going to presume the team isn't completely centralized. Do you have a number of people that are working remotely or?
Yeah, I have some people working remotely. Before I joined, I joined in last year, so I sort of missed the whole pandemic exercise that they went through here. But before that, predominantly everybody was in the office. They didn't really have a work at home policy, and people came into the office every day. Then, COVID and the pandemic happened, and as you mentioned, everybody quickly figured out how to work remotely, and now we have a hybrid model. And so I think that's probably contributed to teams just working in isolation and not really understanding how the work that each other does kind of fits together. And then on top of that, our CEO, I joined 5 years ago. There's a new leadership team who, when new leaders come in, you bring in new leaders. I have new people in my organization that work for me. And just getting everyone to feel valued and that diversity of experience matters. And so having deep experience with the history of the credit union matters just as much as, somebody coming in new. So there's not this divisiveness, because I think we have a lot of divisiveness in general in the world right now, which, creeps into the workplace. And so, we have some divisiveness around people who are short tenured and came from outside versus, people feeling valued who have, long tenure, deep experience in the company. And so, making sure everybody feels valued and making sure everybody feels heard and has a voice are some of the things that I'm focusing on. And I've set up, I call it Lisa's virtual walk the floor, open door appointment that I put on everybody's calendar and tell them to come and chat with me during that time. And it's like an open door, and, trying to just get people to feel comfortable to raise issues and raise concerns to me, so that those are some of the things that I'm focused on kind of overcoming as we move forward.
Just a quick small tip, Mark, just on this asynchronous working environment. I'm not a social influencer, but I kind of like record myself working. So I record my desktop, am I in the lab, how I do things. I upload those videos to some cloud, and then I share with the team. So if you're in a different time zone, you can totally see what I'm doing, and you understand, and that works really well. Like I said, we've been working for 2 years completely remote. Like nobody's seeing each other. We're in different time zones. And we were able to pull out a product that's very complicated. It has hardware, software, regulatory, everything, every piece together. I think that's the one small tip. Just always record you working and try to explain it to yourself. I know it sounds weird, like you're facing the camera, talking to nobody, but it actually is really helpful. Send it to your teammate. They read it. It's like you're interacting with them.
Interesting. That's a new one on me.
Yeah.
There's an interesting question out here. When I'm interested in you guys' opinion on this, because it perplexes me. The questions about a web developer job, and somebody has 3 years of experience but can't land a job. And I've met, people who have said, oh, I know somebody that I mentored and they just graduated from college and they can't find a job. Yet there's, literally thousands of jobs available across the country. Sorry, so, I guess I'm just having a hard time kind of figuring out like, what is in the way of, people who want jobs being able to find jobs when we have so many openings.
So I had a recruiter once tell me, he said, I can qualify a candidate on the basis of their technical capabilities, and I send them into the company to be interviewed. And then things I had never predicted, like the one I thought was the ideal candidate, they just don't like him or her. Like it just doesn't work for some strange reason. And so he said, half of this is the human dimension, right? I mean, it's the behavioral thing. And I think some of the things I have personally found, I'm going to answer your question and then give Joe and John a chance. By the time somebody gets to me, usually they've been qualified on a technical basis. And frankly, I don't have the technical capabilities these days to tell whether you're a good programmer or a bad programmer. And so I tend to look for experience in working with business partners. Like, how did you interact outside the IT function if you've had that kind of experience? Examples of how you've worked in a kind of a team context, with other people, whether they're in IT or not, because you're kind of always going to wonder, like, how's this person going to fit in? And I'll just share one personal story. I got a CIO job one time, and I knew it was down to me and one other candidate. So after I was comfortable being there for a couple of weeks, I reported to the COO. It was a woman, and I said, well, how come you picked me instead of the other guy? She said, you know what? You asked better questions during the interview than the other guy. Like, you actually, like you had done your homework. It was clear you had put some effort into this thing. And so that might be a tip that some people can use, be a little better prepared and try to have some interest in what the business is up to as well. But John or Joe, you want to weigh in on some advice for the candidate that's looking for a job?
Yeah, I think what you, I'm glad you said it, made it a little bit more safe place. It's like, by the time some of these technical candidates have gotten to me, I can't interview them for technical skills. Yeah. And so it really then comes down to, how do I think you're going to fit into the team? How do I think you're going to fit into the company? And so, obviously the person who asked the question going through a tough time trying to find a role. And so we don't know everything about that, but a lot of times it is about, have you found a place where you fit in? Where you fit? Obviously you have the skills, presumably you have the skills, but is this a place where you fit in kind of culturally? On my team, as we're maturing how we hire and the kind of fit, just continuously driving home that these are the cultural traits that we're looking for, and making sure that those are part of the interview process, and that we might be a little bit weird or different as a team because of these cultural traits. And being okay with that has made a difference for us.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, that's a great topic. And so for me, my opinion is there's a lot of skills, right? And there's some skills you can pick up at work easy, like how to do Python, for example. I think that's something you can pick up at work. But for me, I'm more focusing on the skills that's not very easy to pick up from work. The fundamentals, that's what I'm saying. In the past experience, for example, if you come from a different industry, right? Let's say telecom, whatever industry, you're a hardcore software engineer. You know all the fundamentals about object-oriented design, what the software is about. You have all those fundamentals already. I think it's gonna be okay for you to get reskilled. Like if I introduce you to this machine learning new field, again, it's still software, right? It's more about different things, but it's still about the fundamentals are the same. I think that's going to work out really nicely. So that's actually what I've been looking in the past, like the core fundamentals. If you have the core fundamentals and you're engaged, assuming, right? If you don't care what we're doing, fine. But the assumption is you do care what we're doing here. You are a part of the dream, like I said. I think you will be able to be reskilled, in another field. In this case, for me, I guess it's machine learning and AI. That's just one of my ways to do interviews, right, or a hiring standard. It's really hard to set up a test you get a score out of it. I just don't think that's going to work. And for most of the time, I would say I work with the candidate on a project or so. If it's fresh graduate, I would encourage you to do an intern, like a 1 month intern with us, right? And then we'll figure out the best fit with your background, skills, motivation, everything into the team. That's what I've been doing recently, actually.
Yep. So, Lisa, I thought one of the other interesting questions floating around in the Q&A box there had to do with how you go about building vertical career ladders for people. And you've worked in large organizations and are now in the smaller credit union. What kind of I don't know, steps have you taken in the past, or how do you think about if somebody is showing promise or seeking more responsibility? How do you actually make that actionable?
Well, one of the things I like that's sort of happened is the focus on technical skills, especially in some of the larger organizations that have focused on creating career paths for people to continue to stay very technical and then maybe become like a technology fellow or something like that. So, I think offering different career ladders that allow people to either go into management or go into, like retain their, technical depth it offers a lot, because not everybody who's great at technology makes a great leader, but that was the only way to advance. And so offering two different ways to kind of create a path forward to bigger responsibilities is I think is critical. But for me, in my career, some of the best things that I've done was take lateral moves to expand my skills. And even if it was in the same company at the same pay, nothing else changed, just getting that diverse experience. I always reflect back and go, having worked in this team, I can see, I could have done my last job better had I known what I know now. And then, it's helped position me for bigger opportunities. Because a lot of times, even when I think about hiring a leader for a specific skill, like say I was managing an application team and I had somebody that worked on collection systems, I might try to find a manager of that knew collections, but maybe also knew some other aspect of a financial product that would help them do their jobs better. And so, I think having career conversations and getting people more comfortable with lateral rotations would be helpful.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that. I also think, special assignments as well. I think too many people come to work and they think, well, if I work hard, I'll get promoted. Or if I work hard, somebody will come and ask me what I want to do or where I want to go or whatever. And if you need to take some initiative there, you need to go in and say, I don't want to be a software programmer for the next 50 years of my life. I have these other aspirations. I want to work on next year's budget. Or I want to get on an assignment where I'm actually presenting to a C-level executive in this company because I'm trying to develop some stage presence and the ability to think on my feet. And, I know that's a skill that is going to be important in my career in the future, et cetera. I think you'd agree, like 9 times out of 10, if somebody came in and said, I want to work on the budget next year, you go, really? Like you want to work on the budget?
Right. I'm like, oh, can you go do this for me right now?
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's go do that. So I think people are operating on false premises too often, and they just sort of think, do a good job, it'll come to me, and then it goes to other people, and then they get cynical, and you get down a road that you really don't want to be on. So
yeah, and I think having the conversation matters, because when you throw it out there, and even if it's not right now, as something comes up, they're going to be thinking about like, oh, that person expressed an interest in something, like this might be a great opportunity for them.
Well, you'll get a kick out of this. So when I worked in the oil industry, I was at a big R&D lab down in Dallas, and we had a career development process. So asynchronous, 6 months out of step to the merit review, we had these career development discussions, and everybody had to fill out a little form saying like, what do you see yourself doing in 3 years, and what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And probably in the IT staff, more than half said, well, I think I'll be a VP or CIO in 5 years from now. Okay, that's fine. That's a great ambition. But then we tried to find people that would manage cost centers, cost center managers. Nobody on the technical staff wanted to manage a cost center. And I would tell them, how can you think you're going to be a VP of IT if you're not even willing to manage a cost center? Like, this is the most basic elemental financial responsibility you could have in our company. And anyway,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too off on a jag. Either John or Joe, I don't know if you want to talk about, vertical career development or how you coach people or opportunities that you try to create for them.
I think you touched on like we're real passionate about promoting from within. I know I've been at different companies that have different strategies about how to grow a team. We're really passionate about growing from within. And Lisa, what you said about making sure that there's career paths that both go technical versus management, leadership over both. So technical versus management of people is really important. So if that doesn't exist in your organization, it should. I think the thing that stuck out to me through that conversation was also being honest about what opportunities are going to be available here, but then not letting that stand in the way of somebody's growth and progression. So being honest about, well, where do you want to go? Well, that's great. I don't think that's ever going to be, in the next 3 years, that's not going to be a position that opens up here just based on the way we're growing or where we're investing right now. But how can we help you grow? And then it's okay if you leave and go somewhere else. Like we support that. Because this isn't just about keeping you hostage and miserable and working hard. This is about your growth and finding what works best for you.
And I think if you're willing to have those honest conversations with people, it creates followership and, a better relationship with the people with you whom you work. Like some of the best people I've worked with, they like want to be a CIO. I don't have any plans to go anywhere. I love my job and I love what I do. So, but I'm like, hey, help me solve these problems. And, I get people recruiting me for jobs that I'm not interested in all the time. I will refer you to them when you get to the place where you feel like, that's what you want to do next. And, I think you have to export talent to attract talent. And so I've never operated on like hoarding talent. And, it's frustrating to me when I see it at companies where even just, having somebody want to go work on another team at the same organization, like you should have the same mission, like it helps the company. So, and if people see you as a leader that's willing to help somebody grow enough that they can move on, they're going to want to work for you. And, and even just the way HR sometimes articulates it as attrition, like it wasn't attrition, it was like in the same company.
Right.
I totally agree with John, like being transparent about it. Like if you look at the company growth path, there's so many decision-making points, right? You have to make a decision left or right. Be transparent about it. Like if you make a decision, you have to be responsible for it. Especially for us, like a startup, again, right? There's no way out. If you make a decision, you're committed to that decision. And there's not going to be magically another team coming in, take over if things don't work. You have to work it out. And I think as you go along making those decisions, and you basically have that skill, right? You're going to take into account all the necessary components, timing, priorities, budget, everything. Did I consider everything, right? And then once you go making this, critical decision point as company grows, that's a great leader. The great leader is born.
Yeah. I always tell candidates, advancement happens when accomplishment meets opportunity. And all you can do is manage the accomplishment. So just do the best you can with the assignments that you have. And you have to be objective and realistic about whether the company can generate opportunities, of a nature or at a rate or whatever. At least to your point, you're not leaving anytime soon. So, was somebody supposed to stay there for 5 years and keep saying, where's the car that's going to hit her tonight on the way home in the parking lot? Because that's my job. So people have to sometimes do uncomfortable things, go start over, and not start over, but leverage what they've done and go, try something new somewhere else. Well, I'm going to apologize to all the other folks that submitted questions. There are some great questions there. We just kind of ran out of time. I want to thank the panelists, and Hannah, I'm going to let you wrap us up.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. That is a wrap on our discussion for today. Keep an eye out for a follow-up email so you can vote on our next topic coming up in January. Be sure to follow us on our socials so you can be in the know about our up and coming events in 2023. Thank you again to all of our panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules and to everyone who attended today. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
Hannah. Thanks for having us.